think there's a couple slides coming up next that we'll see, actually, that will sort of show an example of that. But here you go. You can see here on the left, there's an example of like how the team model on the left side in the left in possession photo, there's like team models behaviors, and then there's the goalkeeper behaviors. And you should just have all of those clear. And then that's what you're looking for. You're using that to mark against the goalkeepers you're looking for and to cancel out, anyone who doesn't fit, to make that list narrower. And then from there, you use things like collaborating with other scouts and triangulating people's opinions, other technical coaches, general management, and other, like you can use your platforms, your Y Scouts, your stats bombs, if they're in those leagues that get those data, and then you start bringing all that information together. And then again, through that process, you'll filter out a few who might not fit or might not be, fit on some way, shape, or form, and then you'll have a short list of, hopefully 10 to 5 players that then, the rest sort of gets taken care of itself. The right one will get found, hopefully, and that's the idea.
I want to talk about this introduction meeting thing, because Saskia, you've known this, going through the college process, recruiting process, is that someone can on paper be everything that you're looking for your environment. And then you have the conversation with them and you go, realize that they're not going to fit into the environment because certain intangibles were not showcased, on game film or scouting reports or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, I've been in that boat before, and a lot of that is, some of that comes down to the personality of the person as well. And a lot of it does. And I've had, like, everything on paper looked great, but then the conversations is just a miss. It's just not going to sync with the culture that you've created. And that is incredibly important. And, it goes back to what I said about, you could have somebody that checks all those boxes, but isn't a team player in a sense. That isn't, they're maybe they're not the starter, and they're off moping in a corner and they're useless for me, and so those are just as I like, you have, it really comes down to, narrowing that pool down to who's going to fit into the style of play that you want. We saw that in the expansion draft with Bay. They want to play on the front foot. They want to push forward. Their mentality is like having their outside backs like Didasco, who's going to run that flank and get in. Like he said, he does not play defense, but he needs a keeper that is really solid and comfortable with their feet, can bypass lines on a dime, and plays high off their line. And, they grabbed Kaylin, and which was great, but I know that they're going to go look for other keepers that fit that bill as well. So it's not just like, oh, this is a great shot stopper, and stuff like that, but she might not fit into your mold whatsoever.
Yeah. I want to say this right here, Brody, a question for you, that I have, and I'm just, again, thinking out loud here, like, do you do things like, if you're going to bring a goalkeeper into your environment, let's say you're in advanced talks with the goalkeeper to come in as a free agent or as an international discovery player or something like that, do you have them meet the current goalkeepers in the environment, the current goalkeepers that are at Gotham, or no?
That would be a step in the process. It's probably a later one. So, they'll have the initial conversation sort of just with agents in the club, and then it'll be a conversation with club goalkeeping coach or technical staff and the player. And then from there, it could be to speak to the other goalkeepers, get an idea for the field. But a lot of these, well, in this league anyway, a lot of the players talk to each other. And they all just talk to each other and ask each other a lot, questions. They don't muck around like that. But that definitely is something to consider, is to see if they've got past relationships, because you see a lot of the goalies. I'm using NWSL as an example. After the game, you can see a lot of the goalies sort of group together and they have chats for a little while, and because they've all maybe worked in certain environments together. But you also might see some that don't mix, and so that that's something to note, because you might go, well, maybe they won't work well together as a three, but maybe those two would. They've had experience together, so they are definitely things you want to think about. And then, like in this in the introduction meeting structure that I had out there before, it's a good opportunity to ask certain questions. And you can ask certain questions to the goalkeeper, to ask them how they're going to respond to certain situations. If they think they're a first choice and they get dropped, for example, how will they respond? You can throw that stuff out there to see the mentality and to see their the ideas that are in their head. Obviously, it's easy to say something different to do something in practice, but in that conversation, you can ask those questions, and I would encourage to. Yeah.
What if there's a goalkeeper out there, that's such a can't miss prospect that even though there might be some red flags and go, oh, you know what, I don't think they're going to work in our system, it is worth it for us to bring them in and see if we can make them work in our system. Is that a bad idea, you think, Susk?
Well, I mean, listen, first of all, you have to take some ownership as a coach and as a staff that you have to take multiple personalities and be able to mix them together and play. You can't have everything's not going to be perfect, but you have to create the environment to deal with that. And so if there's this absolutely blinding Herman Trophy winning goalkeeper that could go in the top 5 out of the draft, and you have that, you need a keeper and you have that option, then it would behoove you to take the goalkeeper, I really don't think there's that kid that has that red flag that this is a horrible human being. Don't bring them onto your team. You know what I mean? Like, there could be, but I mean, I
don't know. There's been some goalkeepers out there that've got some history.
Guess what? You can always be traded, cut, put on waivers and everything like that. So, but you have to, as a staff and a coach, take, that's like saying, okay, Michael Jordan is a jerk, which he isn't, but we're going to pass on him, and hopefully you can make it work because you would have wanted.
That's management, right? That's the secret and the art of management. So that's a whole nother podcast, that one.
Yeah.
Let's talk about these mistakes that people make, that young coaches make. And by young coaches, I might not, even be talking about like age wise. I'm just talking about experience wise, in this process. By
the way, Michael Jordan's a wonderful guy. I just wanted to say that really.
The example was.
It was just an example.
Perfect
example. I don't want
example.
to get like hate mail.
I can just see Susk like putting on like a Jumpman logo hat right now. Being like, he's fantastic. He's fantastic.
Where is it? Go and get it, Susk.
My autographed copy of Air. Like,
great movie.
My favorite thing here about these mistakes, and obviously, Brody, if you can get into these for the people who are listening to the podcast and not watching the presentation here, being too complex too early. I think that hands down is the biggest mistake I see of young coaches in the preseason.
Yeah, I think that's the case. I think it's a young, it's just a young person thing. You just want to get all your information. You want to show how much you know and how much you can help them, and you want to do it all at once. I think that's very natural. But if you can sort of just control and realize that seasons, it's a process, and you've got time to deliver things. That's sort of the key. As well as just the way that we are as humans and as learners. Like, if you can't give everyone everything at once, they won't take it all in. So you've got to kind of structure how you're going to teach and how you're going to learn, and what you want these people to learn over the period of time you're working with them, which goes back to the first couple of slides where we talk about, knowing where they're at and having a plan for them, or having a baseline for them when they come in, because that will allow you to make sure that you don't have to do everything, because you'll already know where their maybe weaknesses are and where their strengths are. You'll have an idea of already which way to sort of prioritize and which way to go. I think that's a key. And then other things to consider are, like, do you want them to be learning over short blocks, or do you want them to be learning consistently over longer blocks? Or a short block is 1 to 2 weeks, or even every day. Are you trying to get them to learn something just new every day, or do you want them to be consistently learning over 2-week blocks? And there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just depending on what you want to get out of it, because you will get you'll get longer term learning results if you focus on similar things across a longer period of time. But what you might not be able to do with that is touch on all different aspects of the game in 2 weeks, for example. You might not be, you might just do defending the goal for a whole week. And that might be a way to do it. And you'll get long-term learning, like it'll drill in long-term, but you won't get the short-term sort of learning. So they're things to think about. And then I think a big one for me that I've learned, especially going into last season and seasons I've done before, was getting everyone on the same page. You know, it's only in the season, in the slide prior, there's like we did an induction meeting for the goalkeepers. Basically what that was, I sat down with the keepers and showed them how all of the preseason was going to work, how our training was going to work, how I work, everything like that. And I think that was key because it allowed me to set the expectations for them to know the exact context. There was no gray area. There was no room for assumptions. It was like, this is how we're going to do it. This is what we're doing. These are our goals. This is how we're going to achieve it. We can evolve and adapt within that, but this is our framework. And then another key part was also to get it's got the goalkeeper.
Welcome to the Keeper Institute podcast. My name is Tori Corsaro. I'm a strength and conditioning and goalkeeper coach here at the Keeper Institute and your host for today's show. The Keeper Institute is a unique goalkeeper training facility in New Jersey aimed at developing better goalkeepers and better people. On this podcast, we will be discussing all things goalkeeping, character development, and more. Welcome back to another episode of the Keeper Institute podcast. I have a special guest, and no, it's not Jill, although I would always consider her special. My special guest is Leah Brady, who works with us at TKI, and we are just so fortunate that she does because everybody needs her. Coaches, she's got some Gen Pop in there, and our goalkeepers definitely need her too. Leah is one of my favorite human beings. She is very cool, very kind, and just the calming presence we all need. But Leah is also super knowledgeable. She is a speech pathologist by trade. She went to school at Stockton University in Jersey. But we're also lucky that Leah has a passion for strength and conditioning and took that route to educate herself through Prescript, which I'll let her talk a little bit about, which is an incredible company that, a few of us have taken the opportunity to learn from as well. But Leah does the strength work, both at TKI through Whole Set Fitness, but also at her own gym that she has at her house for Whole Set Fitness, where she trains a variety of different people with different goals. So without further ado, Leah, why don't you give them anything I missed?
Yeah, thank you, Tori. No, you did a good job. Yeah, I think I don't talk enough about that. This is like a second career for me. It's a passion as far as the strength and conditioning goes. Comes from inspiration in my own journey, helping myself and helping other people. But I don't like to ignore that I worked professionally in the field of speech language pathology for 6-ish years before making this as equal, I would say, or probably primarily my focus as far as my career and who I'm helping. So no, I think you did a good job. I don't think you missed much. I'm just as lucky and fortunate to have TKI and the coaches there as you guys claim to have me. So, yeah, I can't elaborate much more. If you want me to, I certainly can. But I think
She's a humble queen. She's a humble queen. Just before we get into our topic, which you guessed it, is going to be about strength and just kind of the all encompassing topic of oh gosh, my dogs are going crazy over something. Sports specific training and whatnot. I think that's where a lot of people have questions. Can you just tell us a little bit about Prescript and kind of what makes it different? Because since I've also done Prescript, I know how special it is and the difference between having that background and maybe having a different certificate that you've been educated through.
Yeah, definitely. So although I do have a master's level of education, it's not in, sports science or strength and conditioning. So I kind of sought out new ways at the time of kind of starting this career, kind of was seeking out ways to educate myself better, and really felt that I needed a high standard company or, course that would make me feel a little bit more prepared, I guess you could say, as a strength and conditioning coach and just a personal trainer in general. So
I do have just a baseline NASM, which is one of the many like personal training certifications that you can get online. There's a proctored test and everything, so it's pretty legitimate. You educate yourself, you read the book, you take the tests, you get your certification, you recertify every couple of years with continuing education credits. But somewhere along the way, a couple years into the journey, I found Prescript, stumbled upon it. It's an education company. They dive deeply into biomechanics, so understanding how the body moves, its function, its action of muscles, and really just how, I guess you could say, all-encompassing and synonymous training is across humans, right? As much as we are different, we are very similar. We all kind of have the same structures, right? Our biceps do bicep things, our legs do leg things, and it's just finding the right combination, the right intensity, the right focus of exercise to complement individual goals, right? That's where we get into a little bit more. I have a specific goal, and then that's where we kind of get things more specific. So Prescript was a great way to kind of expose me to other coaches in the industry, those that are pretty high caliber. So working with professional athletes, working with, people to restore metabolic function from like a health standpoint. So there's a lot of resources within that company that really, really put me in contact and exposed me to information that I just don't think is standard enough in this industry. And that's where lines get really blurred for people as far as what does strength training look like for this person versus what does it look like for this person? What's the best practice? What does evidence say? But really, I think it just comes down to looking at an individual in front of you, being a human being, being able to empathize with that person and put yourself in their shoes, and then coming up with something that's motivating for them and that they can sustain, practice to, but also that they can benefit from to reach their goals. So Prescript, I could just sit here all day and talk about Prescript just like I could talk about TKI all day, and just how beneficial and, again, how, in my opinion, I'm a little biased, but standard. It should be standard practice, just because what I've learned without having, a 4-year education in this industry from the Prescript community, taking and seeking mentorships, working with coaches that are smarter than me that I want to emulate, right, through my training, has really just given me the tools. And again, we're always growing, right? But given me the tools to really, embrace this opportunity that has come to me in the past couple of years with confidence, and also just, accountability to just continually learn and be better.
Which is part of why I think that you probably feel that your growth is expedited, because when we can collaborate and we can see, oh, well, this works for me, or I have a community where I can be like, hey, I'm seeing this. Has anyone else seen it before? There's just an easier environment to be like, okay, I have ideas, or this didn't work, this did work, or I've tried out this, have you? It just gives you more data, and that data can help you kind of decide what's best, and it gives you a toolbox to choose from if something doesn't work for me, but maybe it'll work for Maria or Jill or whoever else you happen to be training. And it kind of leads me to my first question for you about this podcast. We have a lot of people who listen that are goalkeepers themselves, and they range from ages like 8 all the way until like the later halves of their careers, college, professional. And I think obviously strength training looks different depending on goals, age, experience level. We also have a lot of parents who listen as well. Can you just talk maybe briefly before we get into more detail on like the benefit of strength training? Because I think oftentimes youth athletes are sold, oh, we should be doing speed and agility, or you need to be fit, or, you got to get strong, but they don't necessarily know what it looks like or why they're doing it.
Yeah. So I'm going to pull inspiration and some words from a mentor of mine that I sincerely look up to and respect. Strength training or resistance training, lifting, whatever term you want to use, can really be broken down into 3 categories. There's strength, there's speed, and there's endurance. I'm pretty sure that you could probably, tell me, Tori, as a coach, you've, had a goalkeeper and they, you ask them what their goal is, or maybe feedback they've gotten from their team coaches. And they say like, well, they told me to be more explosive, or they told me I need to be quicker, or whatever the case is.
Right.
And when you think about those 3 kind of subsets of categories of the strength, speed, and endurance, they all kind of complement each other pretty heavily. So we need to be strong enough to absorb and to kind of produce force through our own body weight, right? So we need to build some strength. And then I don't think I've ever encountered an athlete that says they need to be slower, right? So then we need to take that strength and we need to be able to, transfer that to also staying fast and maintaining our speed, right? So I think there's kind of that stereotype, well, if I lift, I'm going to get slow, right? But if you have a good coach with good exercise programming, you get strong, and then you learn to, kind of maybe take that extra muscle mass that you've gained or that strength you've gained and still be fast. And then from an endurance standpoint or conditioning standpoint, be able to do that in like a long period of time or a sustained period of time, whether that be as a field player, keeping up with the strength and speed like through an entire game, whether that's a goalkeeper in a really intense practice session, being able to take all the reps that they're taking at a time and maintain that endurance of the qualities that they're expressing, right, of the strength and the speed components of it. So I think from just a general preparedness for sport standpoint and longevity in the game, right, as we get older, right, if we're talking about the adolescent goalkeeper or the young youth goalkeeper or athlete, they're having to keep up with size they're putting on as they grow, and forces that they're encountering, whether it be from their body making impact or colliding with the ground during a sprint or loading their leg to push or jump or whatever it is, or actually taking contact maybe as a field player or as a goalkeeper in certain scenarios of the game, creating some resiliency, right? And being strong in positions and being able to have longevity in that sport from not an injury prevention standpoint, of course, but reducing our risk for injury, right? Like exposing ourselves to high levels of forces, chaotic environments, or emulating chaotic environments in the weight room as far as collision goes and impact. And, again, being healthy through our sport. So I think I probably answered your question there, but if you need me to elaborate, I can.
You definitely did, but you also kind of triggered me on something too, that injury prevention. I feel that word has gotten tossed around a lot. And, you and me have talked about this before. We're like, you can't prevent injury because you can't predict injury really without getting too sciencey, right? You can't really predict if you were to just like smash a ball. I wasn't looking to hit me in the back of the head. Like you cannot prevent that injury. But there are some things that we can do to like build that resilience, like you said, right? So if someone was like, what does it really look like when someone says injury prevention? What do I really need to be doing to, I would probably prefer the term like limit injury or increase tolerance?
Yeah. So I think from a general standpoint, that's taking positions or patterns that it's going to be required of someone in their sport, right? So we're looking at joint angles, like levels of how much the knees bend in a certain situation of a position, and again, I'm trying to keep it to the goalkeeper, but also a broad scope here. From field players, or any basketball players, for instance, like there's a demand for fast acceleration and maybe like cutting and change of direction or decelerating really quickly. So it's finding ways to look at an athlete. What does their position or their sport require of them from a movement pattern standpoint? And then how can we take those angles or what that looks like, put it into the gym, and then create environments that either add load, so adding weight to those things to kind of like build tissue, right? So we build tissue around things like ligaments, tendons, structures, and bones. That's kind of like our bubble wrap per se, right? We have lean muscle tissue that's strong, and it's going to be, strong in various ranges of motion. And then we're protecting all of those kind of vulnerable areas, right? When we talk injury, what are we thinking of almost immediately, right? Like knee injuries, We're thinking ankle, we're thinking shoulder stuff for goalkeepers, elbow, things like that. So we're working on in the weight do some type of growth of tissue or muscle tissue to protect those areas of the body and kind of increase their ability to, I guess, accept more force, right? Because me walking is not the same as me pushing from, a set shape position, loading through like a really awkward angle of my leg, pushing off, and then maybe even having to absorb some contact in there. So it's like treating our bodies right, doing recovery things to kind of bring all of those things together and make us more resilient in those positions and in our sport.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's super useful. Now, another question that is going to segue into our next one, but also build off that is, at what age would you say this becomes relevant or important? Because more than ever, I've started to get a lot of like youth, like young youth, 8, 9, 10-year-old parents say, when should we be in the gym? Like, at what point do we start that? And usually I say something along the lines of like, like other sports I'd add in, or like just getting physical activity, something where they learn to move their body. Is there a general age or stage that you would consider starting
Yeah,
with?
so I mean, I don't like to turn away anybody, obviously, but I kind of set the rule, not the rule, but the general age that I kind of accept at least individual clients on, like, saying, I'm going to take your kid for an hour, right? And I'm going to work, I'm going to keep their attention, right, during this,
Half
get
the
meaningful
battle.
work in for an hour, right? So I kind of set that age for those individual sessions at 12 or older. And even that's kind of stretching it for me. But at the same time, I do recognize that I can alter movements, and I don't need to put a barbell on a 12-year-old's back. I don't need that to teach them how to do a deep squat. But there's maybe be a 12-year-old that says like, hey, I want to learn like to squat well. And if they're motivated to do that, sure. Like I'll teach them how to squat well, and I'll put like a sub-maximal load in their hand, like a kettlebell or a medicine ball. Maybe those are the things that I kind of adjust to make it more, again, this is a growing individual, like those ages 10 to 12. We're still growing. We're going to add size and mass to a body that in maybe 6 months or even a month, you see how these kids hit growth spurts, and they just, now I'm like kind of creating these patterns, training these qualities, but then they grow, an exponential amount of inches. And now I'm having to reteach them how to explore their body. So that's where the age we kind of more explore movement patterns. And like we've talked about physical literacy. I don't know who threw that term out there before or originally, but I kind of do like it. It's, I don't like to get on this pedestal or this soapbox, I guess you could say, of kids today just aren't doing all the things that we did to explore movement, right? Like we were outside more often. We were jumping, climbing trees, like absorbing our body, playing tag, playing other sports, like for fun, like shooting baskets, and just this kind of, I don't want to get into this too heavily, but this over specialization or early specialization of kids that still are just learning how to move can kind of take away from those things. So if I were to accept someone of that age into the weight room, I would do things like more like crawling and jumping to absorb body weight, jumping over hurdles, obviously making it fun and motivating, because again, at that age, I feel like, the attention of this is going to make you better for a goal that maybe you don't even have yet, or is just too kind of far into the future. Exploring those things that will overall just help them be better performers and more competent movers, instead of focusing so heavily on, how it transfers to what they're doing in a sport in the moment.
Right. I think that it's something that I think sometimes we get youth goalkeepers that are just so in love with the sport that they're like, I just wanted to be the best that I can at it. So that's where they're like, oh, I see the older people are doing this, and I know eventually I'm going to need it. So it's like a curiosity of like joining. But I like the part about adding these movements, the crawls and that. And I've seen it be a really great addition, because we've had you jump in on some of our like Juniors Plus and Juniors Elite programming. It's like our high school kids, yeah, we know the benefit. It's been great when you're in with them, but like to see it with the younger kids and them kind of getting into it, enjoying it. It's like a nice extended warm up more than it is like a targeted session, I'd say. But it's good, because I think it gives us as coaches a really good idea too of where they're at in terms of their movement patterns. And oftentimes, honestly, it translates quite well. Like, okay, this person could look really athletic in what you had them doing, and they look really athletic when we went in the goal, and someone else struggled a little bit with their balance and coordination. Makes sense. They struggle with jobs or tasks that include a little more balance and coordination. So it's cool to kind of see that crossover and how the two fields are not just relate, but are intertwined.
Absolutely.
Which is a great segue to the next question topic-ish, is sports specific. You started to kind of touch on it. You started to mention it, but I think it's important for us to talk about it, because so many times people are like, oh, this is sports specific, or it has to look like the sport, or, you and I have even had an in-depth conversation of like, oh, this person didn't want to do this because it didn't look like their sport. But does your weight room session need to look exactly like your sport, or what's the balance there that makes it important?
Yeah, so I think the whole sport specific thing, you could have a different definition of that than I do, right? When I think sport specific, I think kind of what I mentioned earlier. This player is a goalkeeper. They need to, for a set shape position, they have to be able to maintain good core balance to stay centered over their feet, right? They need to have good core engagement or pelvic stability to stay stacked at the rib cage and pelvis so that they're not falling really far forward with their chest or have their chest too high, right? You can speak more about like set shapes and keeping shape during like varying instances, I guess you could say, of what a goalkeeper's encountering in their session. And to me, that's like bringing it, what's going to make this goalkeeper stronger in those positions when I bring them into the gym. But another thing of sport specific, another definition might be, okay, well, a goalkeeper, I'm going to bring them into the gym and, again, correct me if I'm kind of going off the wrong path here, but I'm going to like throw tennis balls at them and make them do hand-eye coordination stuff like in the weight room when I could otherwise be making them, again, going back to those qualities, stronger, faster, or just being able to endure things for longer while they're playing their sport. So I think from the sport specific thing, it's kind of blown up too, because I think there's a lot of people kind of just, we all use social media as our resource. A lot of us do for like, we see the LeBrons, we see the, everybody of, anyone major sport, I guess you could say icon, we see what they're doing and we see what other people are doing. It's like, what can I do to get attention on social media, or what looks good for my content? And we're kind of in that losing the true intention of what we're trying to do. And we're not really putting, I guess, priority on, is this truly going to benefit this individual when they play their sport, right? Like, is there measurable things to say, well, we did this and it made them their vertical jump higher, so now they're able to cover more ground in the net. Or we did this, we increased our trap bar deadlift weight, right? And now I'm seeing this person really be able to stay strong through their shape through the different phases of goalkeeping. So sport specific from my standpoint is bringing a player into the gym and just finding those joint angles, finding the positions or movement patterns that they need to do, and then just like improving any aspect of the strength, speed, and endurance qualities that I can. Because I don't think there's ever been question of whether or not if you make someone stronger, faster, and able to endure, that it's going to make them bad at their sport.
Right.
Right?
So would you call it more of a compliment? Like it's a compliment and then like an addition of maybe things you're missing?
Yeah, definitely. So like, not to mention kind of going back a little bit in those qualities of like being more mobile, having more stability, right? To stability of, again, we're talking about pelvis for, strength and stability at the pelvis is going to translate to maybe fewer groin injuries or quad injuries or pulls, fewer, right? We're not mitigating hamstring pulls. They're better able to load and push when they're low diving or high diving because they hold the shape and have the stability of the shape of that position to do so. So I think that something I kind of want to bring it up because I feel like you brought it up in the past, like the whole, you have a goalkeeper session and there's a goalkeeper coach working with a kid on a Bosu ball.
Perfect. You got it. This is my next question. It's like the same question, but like posed in a different way almost.
Yeah. Do you want to do that?
Goalkeeping the gym, bring the gym to the goalkeeping, and like you hit on it. I see it on social media and I can't quite grasp it. So like, yeah, go ahead. Tell us, is it something that is practical? Does it make sense? Because to me, it doesn't feel like it makes sense.
Yeah. I think that, again, people are doing these things. It's like, what can I do to challenge this individual? But it's not really representative of the environment that it should be occurring in, right? Our brains are really impressionable, right? We don't forget environments. We don't forget the environments that make us happy, that we were scared in. We don't forget the scape of an environment, like in terms of what it looks like. And to bring a Bosu ball or tennis ball, I'm not even going to go to the tennis ball thing, but to bring a BOSU ball or weighted ball into a goalkeeper session when you can, at least what I have observed from TKI, when it's so much greater than that. Like goalkeeping, if we're talking that, specificity wise, is like there's so many other components of goalkeeping that we want to make representative through true representations of the environment of which they'll be in, which will never be them standing on a BOSU ball to dive, right?
Right.
We can maybe, like Jill and I in real time, I think even you and I in real time during a goalkeeper session, I'm over on the gym side. Hey, how do I kind of train this? How do I help this person like get their foot position this way? We've broken down things like from a technical standpoint,
Right.
but it's never looked like bringing the gym into the session.
Right.
It's just two people that are seeing an athlete from different points of view, from a technical standpoint and then from a biomechanical standpoint, and then seeing how we can blend. That's the most probably beautiful opportunity that we could ever bring those two things together.
Right.
Simultaneously while they're doing a goalkeeper session. And now I'm not saying either that like a pre-game, pre-practice, post-game, post-practice lift or activation is a beautiful thing too. But again, they're separate, right? We've all watched, on the sidelines of professional sports teams, like you have an assault bike, they're staying warm on the bike, but they're not doing lifting stuff. Or we've seen in NBA games or whatever it is, goalkeepers or field players for soccer games on the sideline using mini bands for activation. They're not doing it when they're on the field, like actually playing their sport or practicing or prepping for their sport. So it's like, we're trying to blur lines of something that should really just be separate, because there's a more meaningful way to train these qualities that we're trying to kind of get from balancing a goalkeeper on a BOSU ball, where we could put them in the gym and reach intensities and have the attention in an environment that's the gym that doesn't, I guess, negatively kind of impact or push into something that, those implements really shouldn't exist much.
I think that last sentence is like you hit the nail on the head with it, of at least my feelings. You have the knowledge to back it and explain it. Is like both are good, but both together take away from the other. Like doing balance work, or I've even seen people get in a trap bar and then dive, like literally on the field. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense, because like I can't lift as much if you're asking me to dive, or I can't dive as well if you're asking me to lift as much. So like separating them, I'm getting the most benefit to get the explosion and the power and the strength that I'm working for from the trap bar lift. But then on the field, when I keep it separate, I'm getting the decision making, the technical, here's how I move my foot, here's how I load my leg, here's the decision between catch or push. Right. When you mix them, it's just that it takes, right, more than it could ever give.
Yeah, and it's chaos when kids are like, I'm not saying that kids don't have or individuals don't have the ability to take in, a wide variety of cues and information at a time. But if we can just do these things in a separate setting,
right,
and like make goalkeeping or whatever the sport or position is about the goalkeeping or the position of the sport, and then use the weight room as an opportunity to just improve, again, those qualities that pretty much every athlete needs at least one of or more of: strength, speed, endurance.
Right.
We take the weight room to do those things. And again, that's not saying they can't coexist, that, we've done it in programming, 10 to 15 minute warm up with Coach Leah, because I'm using med balls. I'm loading joint angles. I'm loading patterns and movement positions that they're going to need once they get into their goalkeeper session. But I'm also like slowly intensifying to build the warm up to a point where, these kids are, from a nervous system standpoint, right, prepared to perform their sport, instead of just going in it, without much of a meaningful warm up, or not preparing the body and the nervous system to do so.
You got me taking notes, just so you know.
Love that.
This is good. This is good stuff. Okay, but I won't take too much more of your time, and we're coming up on our big 30-minute mark here. I want, with your last question, let's say I'm someone who's new and just go like general youth goalkeeper, been in the game for a little bit, old enough to start getting in the gym. What are some recommendations? How do I start? How do I go about it in a way that's going to be productive and safe?
Yeah. So I think that one of the if you're not, are you saying this individual, or we're not doing anything yet? We're getting into the strength training side of things.
Getting into it. Very
cool.
basic.
First and foremost, for anyone listening to this podcast, anyone can ask me a question any given time of the day. My information is not hidden. Whole Set Fitness on Instagram, my website, my phone number's on there, my email. If you're someone that is like, I don't know how to get into it, with no commitment required, okay? I like to help people, and I usually have these things prepared to begin with because people have asked in the past. Ask me, right? Ask, what can I do to get into strength training? What can I do to kind of introduce some things? And again, of course, it'll kind of be individual. From a general standpoint, though, I will just say this for the purpose of the podcast and answering your question, is we gotta learn to absorb and produce force with our own body weight. So jumping. If we're not doing any jumping, we talked about this yesterday, Tori, we got to do some jumping. We got to start experimenting with, again, absorbing and controlling our body with force and speed behind it. So maybe that looks like very low level plyometrics or jumping. So like little pogos, skips, anything to get coordinated or a little bit more coordinated, quicker up off the ground. And doing that through all directions, right? Not just from a front to back standpoint, turning, doing it laterally, working, the frontal plane or the side to side plane of our body, making our hips more mobile in the process. That might look like just learning to tolerate a split squat or some isometric stuff. Maybe, again, to even talk about something even less specific, if you're not already like going out and shooting baskets or having a catch with a friend, and I don't even know if those things exist anymore these days, but if you're not already doing
Leah, you're not that old.
No, but I'm saying, I don't know what kids are doing these days, what their level of fun is. But again, it's also 20 degrees outside, so I wouldn't advise that. But getting outside, moving, exploring your body a little bit more. It's taking any inspiration that you've found, like through anything you see on Instagram or what other athletes are doing, getting a med ball in your home gym, and again, tossing it around, being able to hold some coordination in positions. I'm giving you so many examples, but to simplify it, I would just say hopping, skipping, jumping is a general term for that. Yep. And then just maybe starting to take some interest in just basic movement patterns that as you get older and add weight or are working in a weight room, will kind of just expedite your progress so that you don't have to learn those things. So understanding what a good squat pattern looks like, understanding what a hinge is of your hips, like understanding that those are two different things, and how to protect certain parts of your body. Even things like pull-ups, if kids have a pull-up bar, calisthenics, right? If you're just getting into strength training and you can't do a push-up, start with push-ups. Like, start with understanding that, like, okay, just to be generally strong and generally prepared to be stronger, maybe I need to be able to do a push-up. And maybe that's not a strict push-up. Maybe that's elevating your hands on a countertop or a bench so that it's a little bit easier, doing a push-up on your knees. But trying to progress kind of body weight movements, crawling, calisthenic stuff like pull-ups or push-ups or handstands against the wall. Again, skips, lateral shuffles, karaoke, all the things that we kind of talk about, or maybe we take for granted as kids growing up, like these are in a warm-up, but everyone kind of loses sight of doing them, which would otherwise kind of expose them to some great like rhythm and coordination. That's really, again, just complimentary through anybody that's an athlete or working through a sport.
Brilliant. It's perfect. It's an easy way to start with things that most people know exactly what you're talking about. You kind of already said it, but I know you're serious when you say it. It's like you love when people ask questions. You're so welcoming and like understanding to be like, okay, here's where you're at, and I'd love to help answer that question. Is Instagram the best spot for people to reach out if they're listening?
I would say so. It's probably just like also the most attached to TKI, so I'm sure through TKI's Instagram you guys can find Whole Set Fitness Instagram page. But yeah, direct message on there, a comment, whatever it is, but just something to get my attention. Sometimes I'll even like paste or put like free resources on my story just to kind of, with hopes, get the conversation going. And I just want to reiterate that if you are someone like Tori just depicted in her question that isn't really sure where to start, whether you're an athlete, whether you're a TKI parent who is looking to do better for themselves or just feel better and move better, please just ask, because I certainly am here to share, and to help anybody who is willing to ask and help themselves.
And then last, before I let you go, is there anything you have like that you offer that maybe if they're interested to be like, wow, I love that, I want to work with Leah, like that they could look to? Because you have your website, so wholesetfitness.com, and they could look on there. What do you offer? Like, what will you be offering maybe in the spring, summer?
Yep. So just recently, we're finishing up now, but we had our first high school age goalkeeper strength class. It was once a week for 8 weeks. It was included. Included in that was a month of remote coaching or online coaching, which is one of the services that I provide, and some at-home workouts. So anything that's updated as far as classes go, I hope to continue to do some classes and broaden the population of the people that I serve in these classes. So that's my website or my Instagram is a good place to keep an eye out for those things. But as of right now, my standing services that I offer are individual 1-hour sessions with people. You can get those in packages just very similar to TKI. Or I do some remote training too. So for someone that does not live in close proximity to TKI or, South Jersey, and are looking to get the benefits of a good exercise program that fits your goals, I work with people remotely. I deliver programs based on the information that they give me, what their goals are, and deliver them via Google Sheet. It's pretty self-explanatory. All the resources you need in there, notes on how to perform the workouts, demo videos so that you can see what the movements should look like. And then, of course, don't want to say 24 hours is 24/7.
But darn close to it, honestly.
I do sleep, but I'm available to anyone that works with me, whenever I am available on my phone to answer questions, troubleshoot movements during an activity or workout, troubleshoot pain, things like that. So those are the things I offer now, and I hope to continue kind of to reach more people and help more people along the way.
Leah, you are the greatest. We are all lucky that we get to work alongside and work with you. I know that I can speak like volumes. I could talk all day about like how you've helped me, not only from like my coaching journey and leadership and learning about life, but also in the gym. I feel better. I feel stronger. I feel more prepared for everything that coaching goalkeepers throws at me. So if this is the little push you need, guys, that's it. Even from the train, apparently, that's behind my house. You should sign up and work with Leah, or at the very least, pick her brain because she is a wealth of knowledge. Leah, thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time. I'm always happy to do this and to chat with you. It's always a fun time.
But for now, we'll catch you later.
See you guys.